Welcome students. I hope you all are keeping well at home and staying safe at home. So let's continue with the chapter 2, that is self and personality. So we have already did self and various concepts of self, cognitive and behavioral aspects of self. Then we moved to the concepts of personality, and then we also did type and trait approaches to the personality, and we also did the most famous psychodynamic approach to personality given by Sigmund Freud. So today we will be doing some post-Freudian approaches, and the psychologists who follow this approach are Carl Jung, Karen Horney, Alfred Adler, Eric Fromm, Erik Erikson. Then we will be moving towards behavioral approach, the most famous approach to personality. Then we'll move towards cultural approach, and the last one, the humanistic approach, the most positive approach to personality. So let's continue. The first post-Freudian approach is analytical psychology, the Carl Jung's theory of personality. So let us discuss some interesting things about Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud. When Jung and Freud met for the first time, they were so similar in their interest and had so much to share that they talked for 13 hours continuously. So their friendship became a close one. So the Sigmund Freud said, I formally adopted you as an eldest son. So, and also Carl Jung considered Freud a father figure. So the relationship bond was so strong, but later on, Jung broke off the relationship, and Carl Jung went on to develop a theory of personality that differed dramatically from psychoanalysis of Sigmund Freud. And the first point on which Jung came to disagree with Freud was the role of sexuality. So the second major area of disagreement concerns the direction of forces that influences personality. As Freud viewed human beings as victims of past events, Jung argued that we are shaped by our future as well as our past. So, according to the Jung, we are affected not only by what happened to us as children, but also by what we aspire to do in the future. The third significant point of difference revolve around the unconscious. As Sigmund Freud talked about the unconscious desires and impulses, then according to the Carl Jung, rather than minimizing the role of unconsciousness, he focused more, or Jung placed an even greater emphasis on collective unconsciousness, and he probed more deeply into the unconsciousness and added a new dimension, that is the inherited experiences of human and pre-human species, and Jung made it the core of his system of personality. So now let's look at the important concepts given by Carl Jung. First is collective unconsciousness. So according to the Jung, the deepest and least accessible level of psyche is the collective unconsciousness. So according to him, he believed that humankind collectively as a species stores the experiences of human and pre-human species in the collective unconsciousness, and the heritage is passed to each new generation. So whatever experiences are universal, that is, are repeated relatively unchanged by each generation, become part of our personality. Like our primitive past becomes the basis of human psyche, directing and influencing present behavior. So to Jung, The collective unconscious was the powerful and controlling repository of ancestral experiences. Thus, Jung linked each person's personality with the past, not only with the childhood but also with the history of the species. So we do not inherit these collective experiences directly. For example, we do not inherit a fear of snakes. Rather, we inherit the potential to fear snakes. So we are predisposed to behave and feel the same ways people have always behaved and felt. So whether the predisposition becomes a reality depends on the specific experiences each of us encounters in life. So Jung said the form of world into which a person is born is already inborn in him as a virtual image. Next term, he gave archetypes, so images of universal experiences contained in the collective unconsciousness. So according to the Jung, he also used the term primordial images for this. So there are many such images of universal experiences, as many as there are common human experiences. So by being repeated in the lives of succeeding generations, archetypes have become imprinted on our psyche and are expressed in our dreams and fantasies. Next post-Freudian approach is given by Alfred Adler. So Adler's theory of personality is known as individual psychology. He called his approach individual psychology because it focused on the uniqueness of each person, and he denied the universality of biological motives and goal ascribed to us by Sigmund Freud. So, in Adler's opinion, each individual is primarily a social being. So, our personalities are shaped by our unique social environments and interaction, not by our efforts to satisfy biological needs. So, although sex was of primary importance to Freud as a determining factor in personality, Adler minimized the role of sex in his system. To Adler, the conscious, not the unconscious, was the core of personality. So, rather than being driven by the forces we cannot see and control, we are actively involved in creating ourselves and directing our future. So the term given by Alfred Adler is inferiority complex. So according to the Adler, inferiority feelings are always present as a motivating force in our behavior. So individual Adler proposed that inferiority feelings are the source of all human striving. Individual growth results from compensation from our attempts to overcome our real or imagined inferiorities. Throughout our life, we are driven by the need to overcome this sense of inferiority and to strive for increasingly higher level of development. Suppose a child does not grow and develop. So what happens when the child is unable to compensate for his or her feelings of inferiority? So an inability to overcome inferiority feelings leading to the development of an inferiority complex. So a condition that develops when a person is unable to compensate for normal inferiority feelings. People with an inferiority complex have a poor opinion of themselves and feel helpless and unable to cope with the demands of life. The next post-Freudian psychologist is Karen Horney. So Karen Horney followed much of Sigmund Freud's theory. She disagreed with his view on female psychology. She believed experiences are crucial to the formation of personality. So our childhood experiences as our as we socialized with the persons around us.
She disagreed with the Freud's believed childhood as sexual. So she was totally disagreed with the Sigmund Freud, and she also gave the term neurotic or the basic anxiety. So according to her, the basic anxiety generated from the disturbed interpersonal relationship, and especially if we have disturbed interpersonal relationship during childhood, especially with our parents, with our siblings. So she gave the term for basic anxiety is a neurosis. And according to her, um, anxiety can generate from variety of settings, from our cultural settings, from our family settings. So the example she quote is, during childhood, when parents' behavior toward child is indifferent, discouraging, this takes the child feel insecure, and this she called as basic anxiety, where Freud stated that anxiety can generate from the conflict between the id and ego, conflict between the id and superego, but she said anxiety generate from the disturbed interpersonal relationship.
So the next post-Freudian approach is given by Erich Fromm. So Erich Fromm was critical of many Freud's ideas, including the Oedipus complex. So Fromm believed that society and culture also played a significant role in individual human development, and if we want to understand the personality of an individual, we can understand her personality in terms of their relationship with others, and our personality develops our experiences with other individuals. He was also known for developing the concept that freedom was a fundamental part of human nature. Next post-Freudian approach is given by Erik Erikson. Though according to the Erik Erikson, psychoanalysis is always the starting point, he said, and um, he publicly defined himself as a loyal Freudian, even as he departed from orthodox psychoanalytic theory. So Erikson extended Freud's theory in three ways. First, he elaborated on Freud's stages of development, whereas Freud emphasized childhood and proposed that personality is shaped by approximately 5 stages. So Erikson suggested that personality continues to develop in the succession of 8 stages over the entire lifespan. So Erikson's second departure from Freudian theory was to place greater emphasis on the ego than on the id. So in Erikson's view, the ego is an independent part of personality. It is not dependent on the id. And third, Erikson recognized the impact on personality of cultural and historical forces. He argued that we are not governed entirely by innate biological factors, as the Freud said in childhood. So although they are important, they do not provide the complete explanation for personality. So, because of his elaboration of these basic Freudian themes, Erikson could have been grouped with the neo-psychoanalytic theorist in his book, but we have chosen instead to emphasize the unique aspect of his theory, the lifespan or the developmental approach, which centers on the search for an ego identity. So according to him, the ego identity is the self-image formed during adolescence that integrates our idea of what we are and what we want to be. So adolescence between ages 12 and 18 is the stage at which we must meet and resolve the crisis of our basic ego identity. So if this process is resolved factorly, the result is a consistent and congruent picture. So people who emerge from this stage with a strong sense of self-identity are equipped to face adulthood with certainty and confidence. So those who fail to achieve a cohesive identity, who experience an identity crisis. So identity crisis means the failure to achieve ego identity during adolescence, and they will be more likely to exhibit a confusion of role. They do not seem to know who or what they are, where they belong, or where they want to go, and they may withdraw from the normal life sequence like education, job, marriage. So and seek a negative identity in crime or drugs. So even the negative identity as society defines, or more preferably no identity, although it is not as satisfactory as a positive identity. So the next approach is a behavioral approach for studying personality. This is one of the most famous approach to study personality. So the people who or the psychologists who followed this approach are known as behaviorists. So according to them, we should consider only that data which is observable, which is measurable, and which is definable. So we should focus on stimulus response connection and reinforcement. So the people, the psychologists who belonged to this approach or the school of thought behaviorism are Ivan P. Pavlov, who gave learning theory, and B.F. Skinner, who gave instrumental conditioning theory, and the Bandura, who gave observational learning, are the most famous psychologists who belong to this approach. Next approach to study personality is humanistic approach. So humanistic approach started in the 1950s. This perspective grew largely out of frustration with both behaviorism and psychoanalysis. The focus of psychology, according to them, should not be on the observable behavior, and nor should it be on the unconscious motivation and how to understand it. So, according to them, it is a psychological perspective that emphasizes the study of the whole person. So, humanistic psychology look at human behavior not only through the eyes of observer, but through the eyes of the person doing the behaving. Rogers did not give much importance to the unconscious forces or the other Freudian explanation. He also rejected the notion that past events exert a controlling influence on present behavior. So although he recognized that childhood experiences affect the way we perceive our environment and ourselves, so Roger insisted that current feelings and emotions have a greater impact on personality. So because of this impact, Roger suggested that personality could only be understood from our own viewpoint, that is based on our subjective experiences. So Roger dealt with reality as consciously perceived by each of us, and he noted that this perception did not always coincide with objective reality. So his theory is structured around the concept of self. So Roger proposed a single innate overriding motivation, the inborn ability to actualize. So to develop our abilities and potentials from the strictly biological to the most sophisticated psychological aspect of our being. So the ultimate goal is actualize the self to become what Rogers called a fully functioning person. So his approach to therapy and theory and the optimistic and humanistic picture he painted received enthusiastic acceptance in psychology, education, and family life research. So according to him, he gave two concepts, ideal self and the real self. He said that if there is a more discrepancy between the ideal self, that is what a person wants to be. So if there is a discrepancy between what you want to be and what you are, so the person will be more dissatisfied and will be unhappy in his entire life. He also talked about positive regard. So according to him, this need is probably learned. So although the need for positive regard is universal and persistent, it includes acceptance, love and approval from other people, most notably from the mother during infancy. Even though infants may receive sufficient acceptance, love, and approval, some specific behavior may bring punishments. So, however, if positive regard for the infant persists despite the infant's undesirable behaviors, the condition is called unconditional positive regard. So, by this, Roger meant that the mother's love for the child is granted freely and fully. It is not conditional or dependent on the child's behavior. So, in the same way, in Roger's person centered therapy, he offered the client the same unconditional positive regard. So Abraham Maslow is considered the founder and spiritual leader of the humanistic psychology movement. He was strongly critical of behaviorism and of psychoanalysis, particularly Sigmund Freud's approach to personality. According to Maslow, when psychologists study only abnormal or emotionally disturbed example of humanity, they ignore positive human qualities such as happiness, contentment, and peace of mind. So, a frequently quoted statement sums up Maslow's position. The study of crippled, stunted, immature, and unhealthy specimens can yield only a crippled psychology. So we underestimate human nature, Maslow charged. When we fail to examine the best examples of humanity, societies most creative, healthy, and mature people. So, thus, Maslow determined that his approach to personality would assess the best representatives of human species. So, when you want to determine how fast humans can run, you study not the average runner but the fastest runner you can find. So, only in this way it is possible to determine the full range of human potential. Maslow's personality theory does not derive from case histories of clinical patients but from research on creative, independent, self-sufficient and fulfilled adults. So Maslow concluded that each person is born with the same instinctive needs that enable us to grow, develop and fulfill our potentials. So Maslow's views of personality is humanistic and optimistic. He focused on psychological health rather than illness, growth rather than stagnation, virtues and potentials rather than weakness and limitations. So he had a strong sense of confidence in our ability to shape our lives and our society. So Maslow believed that we are capable of shaping our free will even in the face of negative biological and constitutional factors. So according to him, we have the free will to choose how best to satisfy our needs and actualize our potential. We can either create an actualizing self or refrain from pursuing that supreme state of achievement. So thus we are responsible for the level of personality development we reach.